So a warm welcome to all of you again on behalf of the members of the ERI team to this, the third of our training webinars, and this one is on the Sustainable Development Goals. As mentioned, our presenters today are Brother Terry Dowling and Brother Tino. As this is our third presentation in this series, by now they need little introduction. Both are members of the ERI team in Geneva. Terry is from South Africa and joined the team in January of 2022. Constantine, or Tino as he's called, is a Christian brother from India who has been a member of the ERI team since 2017. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development was adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015 with the aim of ensuring peace and prosperity for all people and the planet, both now and into the future. And at its heart are the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries in a global partnership. And the SDGs, if attained, would end all forms of poverty, address inequalities, and tackle climate change while ensuring that no one is left behind. But implementing those goals remains a significant challenge, as no doubt you'll hear in this presentation. But before the presentation commences, I'll just hand you back to Tino briefly to explain some practical guidelines for participants. So over to you, Tino.
So thank you, Brian. And I've just gone through the practical guidelines, but what I'd like to right now do really is I'd like to mute everyone. So you'll just have to unmute yourself, Terry. Okay. And okay, so with that, we'll start. We'll go straight away into our session. So over to you now, Terry.
So welcome, everyone, and thank you for your participation. Just give me a moment while I try and share my screen. Right, Tino, can you hear that?
Perfectly.
So there's a diagram of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And to explain them, we're going to show you a short film first, or short video. So and please be aware that you don't have to know everything. You don't have to write anything down. These videos and PowerPoint presentations will be shared with you later by Brother Tino.
What are the SDGs? In 2015, world leaders from 193 countries agreed the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The world's new action plan for the next 15 years to eradicate extreme poverty and hunger, fight inequality, tackle climate change and achieve sustainable development for all. The SDGs follow the Millennium Development Goals, or MDGs, agreed in 2000 in a global coordinated attempt to tackle development issues. As a result, the number of people living in extreme poverty has declined by more than half compared to 1990. More girls and boys go to primary school than ever before, and far more people have access to water and essential medicines. But progress of the MDGs has been mixed. Today, over 800 million people still live in extreme poverty. They are also most vulnerable to the increasing impacts from climate change and environmental degradation. Years of hard-won progress fighting poverty could easily be wiped out by even small conflicts, economic crises, or natural disasters. Also, Sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Asia consistently achieve less progress than other regions. The MDGs measured success on national averages, often missing what happened with marginalised groups like people with disabilities, Indigenous groups, rural communities and women. The international community recognised the new challenges and that human prosperity must go hand in hand with protecting the planet. After a 3-year participatory process, world leaders finally adopted 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So what are these goals for? They are end poverty for all, freedom from hunger, health and well-being, quality of education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, sustainable energy for all, decent work and economic development, innovation and resilient infrastructure, reducing inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, sustainable consumption and production, action on climate change, healthy oceans, sustainable ecosystems, peace and justice, global partnerships. There are 4 underlying principles that come with the SDGs and that are transformational in the way we work on development in the future. Firstly, the SDGs are universal. They apply to every country, rich and poor, north and south, developed and developing. They recognise that global challenges like tackling climate change and changing models of development require global solutions. Domestic policies that look at these issues in one country will have an impact on other parts of the world, so we need to coordinate. Secondly, they integrate all dimensions of sustainability: economic development, social progress and environmental protection. For example, they tell us to grow enough food for all without destroying the soil or overusing water, to develop our economies without increasing inequality, or to produce enough electricity for all without pumping more CO2 into the atmosphere. This is similar to what Pope Francis says in his encyclical. We are faced not with 2 separate crises, one environmental and the other social, but rather with one complex crisis, which is both social and environmental. Strategies for a solution demand an integrated approach to combating poverty, restoring dignity to the excluded, and at the same time protecting nature. The SDGs tell us we should leave no one behind. Governments have agreed no goal should be met unless it is met for everyone, including those in society most vulnerable and hardest to reach. So education must reach Indigenous communities, jobs created for women and men, quality healthcare available for all rural communities, and water and sanitation facilities accessible for people living with disabilities. Tackling exclusion is the key to tackling inequality. And finally, the SDGs require the participation of all. The process to agree the SDGs took years and included national dialogues, consultations with civil society groups, the private sector and academia, and ended with negotiations between all governments at the UN. There's a strong sense of ownership of these goals. The result is ambitious, but it reflects what the world wants. Today, the implementation of the SDGs requires ongoing participation at a national and local level. All stakeholders have a role towards their successful achievement. Taken together with the Paris Climate Change Agreement and the Pope's encyclical Laudato Si', the SDGs provide a new framework for approaching sustainable development.
So that short video gave you an overview of the Sustainable Development Goals, what the Millennium Development Goals achieved and where they were lacking, and the overview of the Sustainable Development Goals and what they hope to achieve. And now they were agreed to in 2015, it's now 2023, and this agenda is supposed to be achieved by 2030. So we're halfway through that time span, and yet we've still got so much to do, and we are underachieving in most of these. So we're going to unpack this a little bit now and see what do the SDGs hope to achieve. So, first of all, human rights in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. It is increasingly recognized that human rights are essential to achieve sustainable development. And so the SDGs are a result of the most consultative and inclusive process in the history of the United Nations. In September 2015, 170 world leaders gathered at the UN Sustainable Development Summit in New York to adopt the 2030 Agenda. And today, the SDGs have been officially adopted by all 192 countries. So they are grounded in international human rights law, and the agenda offers critical opportunities to further advance the realization of human rights for all people everywhere without discrimination. It covers 17 sustainable development goals, and they have 167 targets and will serve as an overall framework to guide global and national development action for the next 15 years. We'll unpack that a little bit later. Now, how are they different from the Millennium Development Goals? The Sustainable Development Goals were born out of the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development in Rio de Janeiro in 2012, and they replaced the Millennium Development Goals. And how are they unique? First of all, they are universal. The SDGs are truly a universal framework and will be applicable to all countries. They are transformative as an agenda for people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnership, the 5 P's. It provides a transformative vision for people, and it's planet-centered, human rights-based, gender-sensitive, and focused on sustainable development that goes far beyond the narrow vision of the MDGs. So, they are comprehensive. The SDGs cover issues related to all human rights, including economic, civil, cultural, political, social rights, and the rights to development. They are inclusive. They strive to leave no one behind, envisaging a world of universal respect for equality and non-discrimination between and within countries, including gender equality, by reaffirming the responsibilities of all states to respect, protect, and promote human rights, without distinction of any kind as to race, color, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national and social origin, property, birth, disability, and other states. So to leave no one behind. Now you can look at those 17 and you can judge now, have we achieved anything? You look at the state of our world today. So the goals are, they express an ambitious, specific, and actionable commitment, and always starts with a verb or action. They are concise and easy to communicate. They are aspirational. They are transformational. They are limited in number. Global in nature and universally applicable to all countries, while taking into account different national realities, capacities, levels of development, and respecting national policies and priorities. So those are the main goals. Now, each goal has a target or one or more targets. And these are specific, measurable objectives whose obtainment will contribute in a major way to achieving one or more goals. And the target is an outcome that is attainable. So each goal has targets, and they are an outcome that is attainable. There's an evident link between the target and the goal. You may speak to all relevant stakeholders, nationally relevant and adaptable. They are time-bound, evidence and science-based, and adjustable as science advances and if countries choose to raise their level of ambition. So that's a brief summary of all the targets. Now, each target has one or more indicators. And an indicator is a precise measurement or metric to assess if a target is being met. And the indicator, there may be more than one indicator associated with the target. We'll show you this a bit later. So as an example, let's take Sustainable Development Goal 1. End poverty in all its forms everywhere. That's the goal. And the UN has defined 7 targets and 14 indicators for SDG 1. For example, target 1.1. By 2030, eradicate extreme poverty for all people everywhere, currently measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day. So that's the target, the first target, 1.1. And the indicators for target 1.1 would be indicator 1.1.1. The proportion of population below the international poverty line by sex, age, employment status, and geographical location, both urban and rural. This is disaggregated data. And since then, the international poverty line is defined as $1.9 per day. This was updated from the previous poverty line of 1.25 to $1.9 in 2015. So that just gives you an indication of the goal, the target, and an indicator. But more about this a bit later. So there you are. There's the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Just have a look at that picture before I hand you back to Tino. So what I was trying to show you was just the things that are happening on this site and all the events. Now it shows you 17 goals, and there are 169 targets, and to date, 3,804 events have happened around these targets, 101,344 publications, and 7,406 actions. Now, each goal, it shows you the targets, the events, the publications, and actions, and you can go through all these 17 SDGs. We are going to look at one called quality education, goal 4. Ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And you can get more info. There's 10 targets, 29 events, 10 publications, 1,677 actions. Now, if you go into more info, it expands this a bit, and it can give you an overview of what's happened with targets and indicators and progress and info for each year since they were introduced. So an overview in this kind of slide: ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. And now it shows you, since the pandemic, there has been a deepening of the global learning crisis. 147 million children missed over half of in-person instruction in 2020 to 2021. 24 million learners, pre-primary to university level, may never return to school. And education is a lifelong process. Education is a lifelong process for children in crisis. So the pandemic entrenched inequities in education and these have only worsened during the pandemic. Remote learning is offered to 3 million Ukrainian children in the chaos of the war. And if you look at the bottom here, many countries are improving school infrastructure as classrooms reopen. But globally, primary schools 2019 to 2020, 25% lack electricity, drinking water, and basic education. 50% lack computers and internet access. So that gives you up to date in the progress of each SDG if you go to this slide. Now, if you go to the targets and indicators, you can see there are targets 4, 6, 7, 4.A, 4.B, 4.C. And we'll just take one, target 1. By 2030, ensure that all girls and boys complete free, equitable, and quality primary and secondary education, leading to relevant, and effective learning. And the indicators, you can click on that. The first indicator, the proportion of children and young people in grades 2 and 3, and at the end of primary and at the end of lower secondary, achieving at least a minimum proficiency level in reading and mathematics by set. In the second target, completion rate, primary education, lower secondary education, and upper secondary education. How many complete? So these indicators are measurable, and that speaks to the targets. So you can go through each of the 17 and look at all this. It also gives you some info on progress on this particular goal, and it goes by year. For example, 2016 up to 2022. And it gives you what's the progress and what the challenges are. So this is this particular site, which can be accessed, and Dr. Tino will give that information to you. Now, our second site, is this one, which comes from the Department of Economic and Social Affairs for Statistics Division. So on the left-hand side is listed all the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And you can click on each one and it gives you information. We are going to look at, let's just see, number 13. If you click on number 13, it's the global climate action, climate changes and its impact. And what it gives you is a little video that speaks to this information here, a kind of a summary. It also gives you a whole write-up on things. The rising global greenhouse gas emissions are resulting in record-breaking temperatures and more extreme weather. Fossil fuel emissions rebound to a record high in 2021, erasing pandemic-related declines. Climate financing is just a fraction of what the United Nations says is needed to avert the worst scenarios. And climate change is humanity's code red warning, impacting across all the sustainable development goals. If we don't get the climate action right, there's not much hope in achieving all the SDGs. So we are going to now just show you this little film or little video.
So once again, the Sustainable Development Goals, that's of course our focus today. And what I want to focus on is the center part of this picture, the global goals for sustainable development. How, each of those words means so much. Global, it's for everybody. Goals, all states. And the reason for sustainable development. There's so much you can unpack in those words. And part of that unpacking has already been started by Terry over there. And what's the reason for these global goals? Why have all 193 states signed up to them? Because it is the way forward, the framework for transforming our world, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. And that's something that all 193 states believe in. And when they were setting it out in 2015, okay, the preamble said, this new agenda is ambitious. They realized that, and they wanted it to be ambitious, because they wanted to make sure that no one was left behind. They also said it's aspirational. It aspires to transform the world in which we live. And that's what we are aiming for. It contains a preamble which serves as a communication tool presented under the themes of the people, planet, prosperity, peace, and partnerships, the 5 Ps. And these themes are key to sustainable development. And here, once again, we have the 5 Ps, okay, for sustainable development. The interesting thing about these 5 Ps is all 5 Ps have to be addressed. You can't address 4 of them and leave 1 out. Sustainable development is only going to take place when all 5 Ps are addressed together, simultaneously. People, prosperity, peace, partnership, planet, right? Today, we can have a look at peace over there, and we see if we are looking from Ukraine to Afghanistan to Myanmar, right now what's happening in Sudan, so much, there's such a great need to foster peaceful, just, and inclusive societies. But then we don't even have to go to states. What about within our own communities, within our own neighborhood? Okay. What is the situation of peace over there? I'm just taking one particular P for the time being. All 5 Ps have to be addressed together. So once again, all 193 United Nations member countries signed on to these 17 SDGs to do what? To create the future we want in 2030. That's what they said, to create the future we want in 2030. Well, if all 193 states work towards that, imagine the type of world we'd be living in. Yes, it's aspirational, but it's something to work towards. And as Terry pointed out, in 2023, we are at the midway point. And the question, of course, we are asking is, are we on track? In 2018, just before the pandemic, okay, there was good progress being made. It was slow. We were not on track. It was slow. We needed to speed up. But now in 2023, after the pandemic, are we on track? Okay, so just going to show you a short video over here. It's from the UN SDG report for 2022. This was last year's report. Okay. I'm sure as you watched that video, there were certain sections of it, there were certain aspects of it that you could identify with in your own area, in your own locality, in your own state. And yes. So the question, somebody asked this question actually in the chat, is there a mechanism to hold states accountable to actions carried out around the 5P key themes towards the realization of the SDGs? Yes, there is. And some of you may be aware of it. It's called the High-Level Political Forum, the HLPF. And this is the main United Nations platform on sustainable development, which meets annually for 8 days at the UN in New York. And its main role is the follow-up and review of the SDGs at the global level. All 193 states are encouraged to voluntarily present their national review of the progress made towards the realization of the SDGs at these annual meetings. These voluntary national reviews, or VNRs, are, as the name suggests, voluntary. So states are not mandated to make these reviews or to share these reviews or to participate in them. They're voluntary. Another aspect of these reviews is that they are state-led and they are undertaken by both developed and developing countries. Now, how are these voluntary national reviews different from the reviews, the UN Human Rights Mechanism reviews that you heard about last week? Let's have a look at some of those reviews. Let's start with the treaty bodies. The treaty bodies, as you heard last week, is a review by independent experts or a committee of independent experts in the field, right? So it's not state-led. The UPR, the Universal Periodic Review, is a peer review, states reviewing states, right? So it's states reviewing states. Every 4.5 years, a state comes up for a review. And even though all reviews are voluntary, states are encouraged to present themselves for these reviews. However, when it comes to the VNRs, okay, these are led by the state. And so they are a self-introspective review, where states are encouraged to look at themselves, at the progress that they have made in achieving the objectives of the 2030 agenda, in achieving sustainable development. How have their actions led to a transformation in the 5 Ps? Right? So it's a self-introspective review. So look at it. So just be aware of the differences in these UN reviews. And this is the latest of all reviews, the VNRs. Okay, and they are focused on the SDGs. The targets and indicators of the SDGs form the basis for these reviews taking place. And Terry, in the last presentation, gave you a little background to the targets and the indicators, right? And the interesting thing about the indicators over here are that they're all measurable. They're smart indicators. They're measurable. Okay, and so states have to present this review in the form of disaggregated data, which can be then analyzed at a global level. So these are conducted by the high-level political forum in New York every year. Now, the good thing about these reviews is that NGOs can use the same SDG targets and indicators, the same indicators which are measurable. NGOs can use them to present their review reports on the realization of the SDGs by a state. And they do this at side events at the HLPF, side events that are co-sponsored sometimes by other states and by many NGOs coming together, and at which states are invited to be present. And therefore, NGOs have an opportunity to hold a state accountable for their actions. Yes, so as I just said, the VNRs are a self-introspective review by a state in front of its peers. Since 2016, when the first voluntary national review was conducted, all except 5 countries have participated in the process so far. Some of the states that you are present in, that you are coming, that you live in, are among those 5 countries. I'm just giving you a moment to think which 5 countries have not participated in the process so far. Okay, let's see if you got it right. Okay, Haiti, Myanmar, South Sudan, the US, and Yemen, right? Except for the US, the other 4, we know the type of internal trouble or conflicts that are taking place over there. But these are the 5 countries that have not participated so far in the process. At this year's HLPF, which will be held from the 10th to the 19th of July, 40 countries will present their voluntary national reviews. And among the theme for this year's HLPF is accelerating the recovery from the coronavirus disease, the COVID-19, and the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development at all levels, right? So states realize that they have slipped. COVID-19 has caused a dip, as you saw in that report of 2022, okay? And so therefore, they understand the urgency for accelerating the recovery from the COVID-19. And while they'll be reporting on all 17, a special focus is on these 5 SDGs. SDG 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. These are the 5 that they'll be focusing on. So at this stage, I'm going to take you back to this site, which has already been introduced to you by Terry. I'm going to take you back to the site over here, and I'm just going to share this site with you. Okay, so this is an excellent site. If there's one site, website that I would recommend to you, it's this one. And I'll be sharing this link with you in the resources. All right. It's a United Nations site, okay, website, and you've already seen some of these. You've already seen Terry has taken you through these 17 goals, okay? Like, you can choose whichever one that you are interested in, that you are working on to get further details. Right now, I want to take you to the HLPF site. Okay, so I'm going to click on that. And when I click on that, then what happens is that it opens this site over here. All right. Okay. No, it doesn't actually. Okay, I've gone to the SDGs Summit. 1 minute. I'll just click on that site. Okay, this is what it opens. Now, this year, 2023, is very special because besides having the HLPF from the 10th to the 19th of July, which is held under the auspices of ECOSOC, okay, because it is the midway mark, okay, there's also going to be an SDG summit in September 2023. And this is under the auspices of the General Assembly. So let's have a quick look at what this SDG summit is all about. The SDG summit marks the midpoint of the implementation of the 2030 agenda, and it will bring together political and thought leaders from governments, international organizations, the private sector, civil society, women and youth, and other stakeholders in a series of high-level meetings. And what's the purpose of this? To carry out a comprehensive review of the state of the SDGs, to respond to the impact of multiple and interlocking crises facing the world and provide high-level political guidance on transformative and accelerated actions leading up to the 2030 deadline for achieving the SDGs. Right? As it says over here, it is hoped that this summit will mark the beginning of a new phase of accelerated progress towards the SDGs. So are our states taking it seriously? Yes. Okay. The summit will focus on people. It will culminate 10 months of active preparation. So the preparations have started. Okay. And you may be able to find on this site how you might be able to engage with these preparations. Okay. At this stage, I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint over here. All right. So among the 40 countries that will be presenting their voluntary national reviews are 4 countries that ERI has a presence in, and therefore we are interested in these 4 countries: Canada, Ireland, Tanzania, and Zambia. They are among the 40 countries. 2 countries will be presenting for the first time at this HLPF, 37 for the second time, and 1 for the third time. More information on this is available, as I said, on this website. And so you can go to this website and find out if your state, how many has it presented the VNR? How many times has it presented? When is the next time it will be presenting? You can check out more details on this website, which I will share with you. So states, NGOs, and we ourselves have an important role in making sure that we keep believing and keep working towards the implementation of the SDGs if we want to see a transformation by 2030. Will all these goals, will all the targets Will all the be fulfilled? I don't think so. But let us try and get over the 50% mark. Let us try and get over the 60% mark. Let us try and get as close as possible to that 100%. Just like the MDGs were not totally fulfilled, but out of the MDGs came the SDGs. And you can be sure that out of the SDGs will come another framework. But let us, in the intervening time, in the second half of this time frame, let us try and let us urge, let us lobby our states to do their best to achieve as much as they can of the SDGs. Okay, so at this stage, I'm going to invite Brian, okay, to come in. Brian, you can unmute yourself and for your final comments, Brian.
Okay, thanks, Tino. I think most of the questions that I had a chance to look at have been answered in the course of the presentation. Maybe just one comment. One of the things that emerged was the lack of finance for the implementation of SDGs, and it was briefly mentioned, but the war in Ukraine, I think, is also something that's had a severe impact because there's been so much increased military expenditure, and also whilst many countries have condemned Russia's invasion, hasn't been universal. So I guess that's one area that occurs to me that is a distraction. We couldn't do a lot about the COVID pandemic, but the war is something that certainly perhaps more could be done to avert. And there was a question there about advocacy. What can we do to advocate for the SDGs? Well, I suppose there's the mechanisms that we've talked about in the previous sessions, but also, and then I mean, I know this depends on the particular countries, but in many countries you can make direct contact with parliamentary representatives and urge action, or we've been talking about these voluntary reports, maybe to ensure or encourage your government to participate in those high-level political forums. So I suppose there are some avenues for advocacy, and as with all the issues that we talk about, even just raising awareness amongst the people that we work with is a way of contributing towards that. So they're just a brief couple of comments.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. Thank you. Terry, over to you.
Now, just to add to what Brian says, one of the questions was, how can an impact analysis be done? I suppose you can go to government websites to look at how many people are in education, how many should be in education. You could even conduct your own at your local area if you are involved in schools. How many kids in your school have fallen out because of COVID, etc., and forward that information to your local government representative, etc. So I think in many ways you can get involved. One asked, when was the Philippines last participate in the VNR? Well, I don't know. We have to go to the website and find out. One other question was, can you observe the VNR process taking place at the General Assembly? I don't know, Tino. Can you answer that?
I think so. Okay, because just like the other UPR, just like the UPR and the treaty body sessions are webcast by the UN. Okay, the main sessions of the VNRs, I'm sure, are being webcast also. So you just have to go and check. All right. the side events will not be webcast by the UN, but most organizers of side events will themselves stream the event live. Okay, so in I'd say in 90% of the cases, yes, you will be able to see them online or forward.
The last one is what Brian mentioned is education and raising awareness about the SDGs and what is going on in your own particular area and in your own particular country. Thanks, Tino.
Okay, so thank you, Terry. Thank you, Brian.